I'm Justin. The bigger question is, do men care about that there's a thing called men's fashion?
Yeah, what do you think about that? Do men care that there's men's fashion?
I think you have different demographics, you know?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily fit a stereotype of people who care about men's fashion.
Really?
Because I'm in an industry, I work in IT. I work with people who oftentimes, you know, a t-shirt and jeans is considered fashion if it's got a nice design on it.
Like design like what?
What's that?
Like what? Design like what's a nice design?
Technical, you know, maybe a little bit nerdy, maybe TV series, that sort of thing. That would be like, you know, my colleagues would probably be interested in that. Not necessarily my colleagues, but people in my industry in general, you know, or something like a reference to something like Star Trek or something would be like, you know, that sort of thing would definitely tend to come out.
Well, to me, Justin, you're looking actually pretty fashionable. I mean, I see that you're wearing an ascot, which is something that you don't normally see, which tells me that you're somebody who's conscious about the way you look as a man. You're beautifully groomed. You have a nice pin. I mean, you're well put together. You're wearing beautiful chino pants. So you're in a man kind of way. You know, you're in a, I would say, fashion forward in a man kind of way.
I mean, you could say fashion forward, but you also say fashion backwards.
Okay.
Because in the sense, what I wear now would have been relevant 50, 60, 100 years ago.
Precisely. This is true.
The difference is that I accessorize it in ways that wouldn't necessarily have been thought of. I tend to be very creative with my fashion. I'll mix things that people hasn't necessarily thought about. I look at it in the morning, I'm like, what do I feel like today? And I start looking at my patterns, my colors, what jacket and trousers am I wearing. And then overall I try to put something together. I wore this today for work.
Okay.
Officially, I should wear a polo for work.
Oh, really? Because you're in IT, so it's a very casual thing. You know, Justin, I love what you say about what you're wearing as being relevant now, and it was also relevant, you know, 100 years ago, in a matter of speaking. I mean, if you took apart everything that you're wearing individually, you can just kind of like twerk it and put it together. My question here is for a man's dress, is that, you know, do men's fashion need an upgrade? Do you know, the fact that you have something that's relevant 100 years ago, do you feel like we need to go into the future in men's fashion and to create something perhaps a little different that may...
I think that creativity is really important. I think historically men's fashion is very fixated within, you know, this is okay for a man to wear, this is not. Whereas women's fashion, for example, is a lot more open.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact that women's fashion is more dynamic, if you will?
Well, there's two ways to think about it. One is your women's fashion is disposable. What you wore last year is no longer relevant this year, which I find that is problematic because it's wasteful, and also because a lot of times, in order to create something new, if you create something new that's completely different than last year, at some point you might create something that's less than nice.
Okay.
You got trends that come out that aren't necessarily really that great, but they're popular this year, right? And to me, it's about the classics. It's about what will transcend today. What will look good when someone looks at it. When you look at an historic picture and you say, those people, they're really on point. It's like, I think it's important to have fashion that's some level environmentally friendly, responsible, because it's long term, and it's actually good looking.
Right.
If it's good looking and it's good quality, it will be environmentally friendly because you don't have to replace it.
So, you know, in women's fashion, we do have those classic pieces that you can go back to time and time and time again. But the difference in this respect to women's fashion and just having the classic is that there's more diversity in women's fashion, which is why we're talking about this because the general observation is that men's fashion, the so-called classics, is always somewhat the same silhouette. And while on one hand it's very easy to just go through your closet and you pick out a blue jacket and you put it together and the same shirt, but you're wearing basically the same silhouette. So the question here for you is moving into the future, and we're heading into it. You're in IT, and you see how the world of communication is changing so rapidly. Our future is looking very different from what it is now. Do you think that there is a place in the future of men's fashion that will or needs to take on that same element of change as the world is changing?
So, you asked what sounds like a simple question, but is realistically not a simple question.
Okay,
in the sense that,
that's all right.
First of all, I think that technology is bringing the world closer together, which means
Yes.
that suppliers are closer to customers, which means that it's going to be possible to get a lot more custom products. What that entails is it's possible to get a lot more custom looks, a lot more interesting and different pieces of fashion that wouldn't necessarily be before. So yes, but there's also the more society becomes flattened, if you will, there's also an attitude towards, well, maybe I just don't care. And I feel like men a lot of times just don't care.
And why do you think they don't care? Do you think it's because that the choices are limited, the dynamic aspect of men's fashion perhaps is not there, there's not too much to care about? What do you think about that?
It's a number of things. First of all, I'm in a hurry to go to work. That's an easy one, right?
Yes.
Or I just threw this on, I don't give a shit, right? But beyond that, I feel that it has something to do with gender, it has something to do with sexism, in the sense that a lot of men are afraid that if they look good, they won't say this, right? But they're like, what if maybe I dress nice, then I might be gay, right?
I've heard that. I've heard that quite a bit.
I don't feel that way because I grew up and people have always thought I was gay.
Yes.
And I'm not, but obviously I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
And it's because I've been so stigmatized by people who thought I was, I definitely have a certain respect for people who are.
So we're moving then into perhaps maybe because of this very thing, where men really want to move out and express themselves by means of the fashion without having being labeled gay, whether you are gay or not. So now it seems, and as a designer, designers are moving more into what they're calling now, as we speak, a gender-neutral environment. How do you feel about that aspect of moving into a gender-neutral?
My issue is that gender-neutral often comes up with androgynous silhouettes, which not necessarily bad, but a lot of times the cuts are horrible.
Okay, that makes sense.
And not because the cuts themselves would be horrible, because of what they're trying to do, but because fashion is oftentimes trying to push the envelope of what's socially acceptable in a sense of, does this even look good?
But fashion does that. Fashion is the voice of the future.
But what I want to wear
Yes.
is something that has clean lines,
Yes.
looks nice. Like for example, if women want to wear pants or trousers or what have you,
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned
that's
that.
totally cool.
Yes.
But if a man wore a skirt,
Yes.
think about it.
I'm so glad you're mentioning that. Yes.
You're going to be labeled as, there's so many things you could be labeled as. And to me, that is a sign that first of all, we don't respect women at the same level as we respect
Interesting.
men.
Yes.
And second, that men really don't have a choice in fashion because if you go outside of a certain defined gender role, you immediately you've lost your masculinity, which is bullshit.
That's most amazing, Jason. I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the formats here at A Man's Dress, we are really advocating the premise for men to wear. We don't call it a skirt, we call it a manche. And the history for the reason for calling it manche can be found here. But we call it a manche because we feel that men should be able to have that choice. Now, designers are coming up with very interesting ways of creating this kind of garment, which one, it's comfort. Two, it's having choice, it's dynamic, it's moving towards a different scale of men's fashion. So talk just a little bit more about that for us.
So one of the things actually has to be a space where if you wanted to have a skirt or dress, it's
Or
not
manch.
whatever it is.
Say it,
I don't
a
care
manch.
what it's called. I don't care what
Oh,
it's
you
called.
don't care what it's called.
But here's
But
the
as
thing.
long as it's a legless garment and you have a
Exactly.
choice.
As long as it looks good.
Yes.
And that's the key.
Yes.
Because right now you have two things. You have men who wear cargo kilt. You have people who are, for example, doing acts where they're not necessarily transgender, but you have like, what's the word for it? When you go, when you have people who are intentionally dressing to look like women,
Cross-dressing,
cross-dressing,
yeah.
And I think there should be a space where people are not trying to necessarily cross-dress, but maybe there's a feminine influence in it, where
Yes.
there's a smoother, a more detailed, a more beautiful aspect.
Yes.
Why not?
Indeed, why not?
Why should you have to be gay, or why should you have to be
Right,
women to
right.
necessarily appreciate that? It's extremely comfortable, and if it was designed correctly,
Yes.
it could have, but right now we're not really seeing design for that. And I think there's something where if people can get past the roadblock mentally,
Right.
it could be something that could be really interesting.
Fantastic. Jason, I think you've just hit up on exactly what we're talking about. I see you as being the face of men's fashion future. I think that that's exactly what a lot of people want to say that are not saying, and I want to thank you so very much for voicing your
Absolutely, no
thoughts.
problem.
And I think you're fantastic, and I hope that you will visit us here, and I want to see you again. Maybe you'll be on one of our fashion shows or runway for a men's dress. Thank you so much.
Thank you.